Okay, resuming debate, the honourable member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Oui.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, colleagues. It's a pleasure for me to have this opportunity today to rise to speak to Bill C-76 for what I hope is the last time. But if I can make some remarks about the bill, Mr. Speaker, I would say this.
About democracy, fail. If this bill was truly about the Prime Minister rigging the election for the benefit of this Liberal government, mission accomplished. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I will go on to explain how, in our view here in the official opposition, the way that Bill C-76 fails in so many regards to achieve the democratic purposes which the government claims that it does. The first regard would be in regards to the spending limits during the pre-writ period. Historically, Mr. Speaker, of course, these were very different than what was proposed in Bill C-76. Within Bill C-76, we saw these given specific limits, specifically in regards to not only third parties, but also registered parties. And in the original format of the bill, Mr. Speaker, it would only take 4 third parties to outspend a registered party. Now, through the graciousness of my colleagues and as well some negotiation talks, we were able to get this up to the $2 million, which I don't necessarily believe my side believes is fair, but it's certainly an improvement over what it was before previously, but with 1.5 million. But essentially, Mr. Speaker, what you are doing when you set these limits is you are essentially gagging Canadians. You are not giving them and the options of the different parties which are represented the opportunity to present themselves to Canadians, to provide Canadians with the information that is required in an effort for them to make an informed decision. But essentially that is what the government has tried to do with the Election Modernization Act. And may I say as well, Mr. Speaker, that essentially, in addition to rigging the election for the Liberal government, what this also does, of course, is attempt to undo everything that was done within the Fair Elections Act, which through PROC we had to sit through several times, the Unfair Elections Act. Ha, ha, ha. So very funny. So, Mr. Speaker, I will say that it's also very interesting to me because, as we will see, in addition to the spending limits, there were many other things which I think attempted to they will say, achieve democracy, but which did not. The second I will say is the attempt to curtail foreign interference. And again, as I have stated before in previous speeches, the measures which were put into place under this bill were essentially like a slap on the wrist, like, don't do that, that's bad. But when in fact we offered, and this is very well known at this point, 200 amendments, 210 amendments in an attempt to serve the Canadian public, in an attempt to serve democracy, and less than a handful were accepted, Mr. Speaker. Well, some of them were very much in regards to the attempt to absolutely keep foreign interference out of Canadian elections. And in fact, we are not seeing that this is the thing which is going to happen as a result of Bill C-76 coming into place, because, as I said, not only does it not it slaps on the wrist, but it does not legislate the mechanics which would be necessary for ensuring that this foreign interference doesn't take place. As well, Mr. Speaker, I will add, it is very interesting to me that, as we saw yesterday in the privacy discussions that took place with our colleagues, that, it's interesting how when this sort of foreign interference was on the other side of the House, there was not a lot said about it after the last election, but if you will, the tides have turned, and and all of a sudden we are seeing the effectiveness of these third-party groups, and now these things become very interesting. The third reason, Mr. Speaker, that Bill C-76 fails to protect the Canadian public is in regards to foreign influence. And this is something that is very alarming here on our side of the House, because we are very aware of the interventions that we saw not only in the United States in their most recent election, but also with Brexit. We're very concerned, and Mr. Speaker, I won't go into the suggested protocol which for during the election, which we also believe should be extended perhaps to the pre-writ period, and as well extended indefinitely. We are not convinced that it is a protocol that will serve Canadians, but put the protocol aside for a moment, Mr. Speaker. It was absolutely, foreign influence was absolutely ignored in this bill, and it's something that is very, very concerning for us here on this side of the House. Then, of course, Mr. Speaker, I get into the greatest concerns for us over here, and those include the use of the voter cards as the proof of residency, which we are very committed to ensuring the legitimacy of the electorate. That is a conservative value which we will not forego, which we will not give up upon, and the use of the voter cards does not ensure that. We feel very confident about that. In addition, Mr. Speaker, in regards to preserving the legitimacy of the electorate, the non-residency requirements which were withdrawn, we're very concerned about those as well. The vouch to return to Canada, the 5-year leave requirements, these things were withdrawn, and as I said, as a result, they very much leave us concerned as to this government's safeguard for the legitimacy of the electorate, which is the most important thing of all, ensuring that we have safe and fair elections for Canadians. That is the obligation of the government, and we take our role in pointing this out to the government as the official opposition very, very seriously. Of course, Mr. Speaker, this is coming back here because this bill went to the Senate, and our Conservative colleagues in the Senate who are truly conservative, who do not wear the veil of independent senators. We're very proud of our senators over there. Proposed 4 amendments to the bill on Monday, but all, Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, were no surprise defeated. So here we are again, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion of Bill C-76, bringing back this piece of legislation which fails Canadians, which fails democracy, which fails the Canadian electorate. But this really isn't a big surprise, considering that the government is also putting forward the debate commission to not only rig the election in their favor, but to rig the debate leadership process in their favor as well. And of course, we certainly cannot overlook this Liberal government's attempt to buy the media for close to $600 million. We simply cannot overlook all of these things. So, Mr. Speaker, it is with much regret that we come to have the final debate upon this bill. We think that it is a travesty for democracy in Canada, but frankly, it's no different than what's been par for the course with this Liberal government. Between the pre-writ spending, the true lack of commitment to foreign interference and foreign influence, the use of the votership cards, the taking away of the non-residency rules, it's just really not surprising for us that this piece of legislation would be pushed through prior to the upcoming election in 2019, and democracy, again, would not be served. So as I said, if this bill was truly about democracy, fail. If this was about the Prime Minister rigging the election for his Liberal government, mission accomplished. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I would like to make the motion be amended by deleting all the words that and substitute the following: the order for the consideration of the amendments made by the Senate to Bill C-76, an act to amend the Canadian Elections Act and other acts, and to make certain consequential amendments, be discharged and the bill withdrawn, as seconded by my colleague, the honourable member from Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.